Diane, I'm listening to a podcast, Black Lodge Trivia Night. I've never heard so many game aspirations in my life.
All right, welcome back to Black Lodge Trivia Night. This is Art. I'm here by myself. We're down Matt and Patrick. They are at Heidi Klum's annual Halloween party. Heidi, I assume my invitation got lost in the mail. I'm trying not to take it personally, but it's getting a little difficult at this point. Seriously, every year I never get an invite. But yeah, so Matt and Patrick are there. I'm sure they're killing it with their costume. I think they went as like a group costume. So, and that's always fun. Anyway, I'm here tonight with another Bookhouse Boys for a couple different reasons. One, I want to talk about HarnWorld, HarnMaster. Also, I say this all the time, like I'm trying to learn, and so I'm trying out some new stuff to see how it goes. Let me just see. Okay. It's a very technical test that I just performed. So anyway, I want to talk about Harn. Harn is from Columbia Games. There's also a version from I think Celestia Games or something. Harn was created by, you can see here, N. Robin Crosby. Now at some point, Crosby, Columbia Games, I don't want to say it was like anything he did. I have no idea really, but at some point they decided to go to their separate ways. I think the idea was that Crosby wanted to keep developing the rules, maybe making them a little more simulationist, a little more detailed. Columbia's like, actually, I think we got it. And so they sort of made an agreement where Columbia would maintain its portion of the rules in a very specific part of the world. Crosby could continue developing the rules with what I think is called HarnMaster Gold, which is about to have a new book come out within the next, I don't know, pretty soon. I think I've done everything I need to do to sort of get my order in shape, paid for it, bought the book. It's total, I don't want to say it's like a total rewrite, like word for word, but total new presentation, really beautiful layout. Anyway, and that's part of what sort of got my thoughts on this system to return, because I know at some point pretty soon I'm getting a new edition. Anyway, right now I'm looking at the Columbia Games version. I have the HarnMaster Gold version in PDF, but not print. You can see here, if you buy HarnMaster from Columbia Games in a physical form, they give it to you in a 3-hole punched printed format, which for me personally didn't work. So I bought the PDFs, I printed them out and had them spiral bound at Staples or an office supply store. Anyway, not important, but that's what you're sort of seeing here. HarnWorld, Columbia's been really good about putting out books on Kickstarter. They're sort of getting everything out into really nice formats. HarnWorld was one that they did recently. This is the setting book. This is the rule book. I'm gonna start with the rule book because actually I think it's the less interesting part. But it's basically a D100 system. It's very simulation-y. It's meant to be sort of detailed, I think, and I think a lot of people who are familiar with the system probably lean towards this, is that it's kind of a front-loaded system. I think I'm getting a shadow from my Bavracha here. Let me see if I can put it somewhere else. I need to have a drink or else my throat's gonna just dry up and shut down. So anyway, this shadow is from a stack of stuff I'm about to pull over in a little bit. It's front loaded. Character creation can be very detailed. Once you get through character creation, it's a D100 system. You roll under your stats. You get penalties or bonuses depending on modifiers for the situational things. You combat, like in Mithras and a lot of D100 systems at the time, is opposed roles. You have a defender role and an attacker role. It's not like reinventing the wheel, which is why in a lot of these videos I don't go page by page with the rules. But what I will do is I'll show you the book a little bit. You start with character creation. Now, again, like I was saying, character creation is extremely detailed. And I think a lot of systems these days try and get through this part as fast as possible. They want, they want you to be up and playing quickly. Older school games weren't so interested in that sometimes, I guess you could say. And to be honest with you, making characters can be fun. When I grew up as a kid, and I think Matt was talking about this with Pathfinder, I would just make characters, and that's kind of nerdy, I know, but that's sometimes what I did. I was like, I feel like playing, but I don't have anyone to play with, so Let me make a character and see if that gets me some of the vibe I'm looking for. So it's, and I'll show you, like, it doesn't really matter either way, but a lot of dice rolling if you want. Species: human, elf, dwarf, other. This is sort of interesting. You can sort of see the stat breakdown. 1 through 97 is a human, 98 is an elf, 99 is a dwarf, 100 is a other. Here's the thing. I don't know. I don't know why elves and dwarves are in this setting. They are clearly. This is, I'm sort of speaking hyperbole. Elves and dwarves are sort of relegated way off to the side. They aren't really meant to be part of the main setting in an integral way, the way it is in like D&D, Middle Earth. You can sort of picture the elves as if, like, say in Middle Earth, like the elves already basically took off and there's only a couple left. It's that kind of thing. They're an extreme rarity, and they're really often the dwarves. Again, reclusive. They've sort of holed up in their own little section of the island of Harn, which is the setting, which we'll get into a little bit. In my mind, you're not really meant to play dwarves and elves, but they give you the option. When we get to the setting, we'll get into more about how it's sort of like this all-inclusive, blah, blah, blah. Sex, if you want to roll it, great. Sun sign. So here's the thing. Like, part of the reason why the character creation is so detailed is because the setting is so detailed. And I know breaking it up in half and half is going to make it a little weird, but you can sort of see, you can, roll day and month when that is. It sort of gives you your zodiac sign. These things aren't just, for flavor. They actually can impact different things like magic, pre-spells. Like, depending on what sign you are, you can get bonuses or minuses. You can roll your social class, clan head, family development, a lot of detail. A lot of these things, estrangement, like how you doing with your family, little table here. A lot of tables, a lot of detail. If that's your thing, it can really help you flesh things out. Which again, I think pairs well with how fleshed out the core setting can be. Again, if you want to roll height, frame, weight, a lot of detail. For your main stats, strength, stamina, you just roll 3d6, and that's your total. But it's not just strength, dex. You have eyesight, hearing, smell, voice. And these are interesting because I feel like it opens up, man. So, like, say, like in a game like Mithras, there's no voice stat, right? But voice here is the pleasantness and or volume of the character's voice. So if you wanted to do something, you might need to, like, well, what's your performance? Well, performance might not be exactly what you're looking for. And so by giving stats to your main senses, it sort of opens up the possibility to give you more ways to figure things out. Like, actually, instead of this, roll that. And also, it'll play into skills. Interesting thing is, when you roll stats, it's a 3d6. I think you actually roll 3d6. Like, so for skill checks, you roll like a d100, trying to roll under your number. Criticals are if you roll a number that ends in a 0 or 5, so like 10, 15, 20, 25, above your skill. If it's a failure, those 0s and 5s become critical failures. But yeah, I think for these, you actually roll a 3d6 to check, sort of like a GURPS skill check. You can have like an optional medical, again, tons of different things to help flesh out the character. You can be crazy. You can have pyromania. You can have toxicophobia. You can have a violent temper. All these little things that if you want for it to be there, it can be there. They have a sexuality table. I think you don't need that in this day and age, but again, this table, this game was probably printed a while ago. Yeah, personality attributes, intelligence, aura, will, morality. The other ones were physical attributes, dexterity, agility. So it sort of breaks up a little bit that way. Then you get into like, your deity, if you want to roll, if you want to choose. Deities, I think, can interact a little bit with your sun sign. There's piety points. Piety points can be, in my recollection, piety points are a little bit like, it's a resource I think that the player can spend to get help. And so So you can receive piety points for doing pious acts, and I think when you need help on a roll, you can call for divine intervention. And it says right here, divine intervention. You can forfeit piety points by sinning. And then keeping in mind that sinful act to one deity may be a pious act to another. But that's the whole thing, right? Like there's a lot of detail going into this. Occupations. So this is an interesting thing. This is a typical thing of a lot of these systems like Warhammer Fantasy, Zweihander. You can be like a charcoaler. You can be, there's, let me double check that. These are incomes, but let's get to the occupational skills, occupations here. Farmer, herdsman, gladiator, guard, servant, cook. You can see there's tons of it. If you want it to be random, you can decide, are you tribal, Viking, feudal, imperial? Most people I think are feudal. Roll a D100, be a tent maker. How much of the population of this particular job is in a city? It gives you that percentage, so you can sort of know, like, oh yeah, no, I'd most likely be. Can't tell this is in focus. I think I have autofocus on, but anyway, I'm hoping it's focusing correctly or correctly enough. Anyway, so again, because like I keep saying, I'm trying to learn, so I changed the lens because I was trying to change the mic. There's a mic right here. I didn't like the wireless mic at all. It functioned, but I don't know if this is going to be any better. But the wireless one, I really just didn't care for. Like felt like I was getting interference, and I'm, I'm recording, as you can see, in my dungeon. So what I was going to say about this, games like this, Warhammer Fantasy, Zweihander, this game that give you the option to be like a clothier or something, I don't like it. Or let me say this, it's not that I don't like it. I think it's great that it's there for GMs that are going to come up with ways to do that. Like, I think I heard of a Harn campaign somewhere. I don't know if it was in like the forums. I don't know where I heard it, but basically I think the people did a campaign where they were like a traveling troubadour act or something. There was some kind of like performing traveling troupe. And assuming I use troubadour in the right way. In order to do that, you need to have all these different things. And I love the fact that Harn and all these games let you do that. I will say, though, the supporting adventures that often get published don't lean into this kind of thing. My experience with Zweihander was that we were doing sort of a really interesting adventure that most character backgrounds were not suited to. And then you could say, well, that makes it interesting. Like you're not meant to be like a superhero. And like, you're right. But it also meant that a lot of the time we couldn't do anything. And you know what I mean, right? Like we would fail more often than we succeeded. And sometimes you're just like, oh, okay. All right. Well, I was going to try and nope, can't do that. Can I sneak around the back? Nope, can't do that. And so eventually you're like, okay. And I feel like it ends up in a way limiting some of your gameplay choices, because a lot of games end up, you want to be like, I don't know if a hero is a strong word, but like, you don't want to just be like a guy working in a shop. Eventually the story is going to take you elsewhere. And I find that it can be tricky because you are like potentially woefully unprepared. Doesn't matter. Anyway, when I've run HarnMaster, I did like a 10, 11, 12 sessions. I forget how many it is. They're over on the Alcoholic Adventure Cabal. Our efforts sort of fell apart. Part of the reason why they fell apart, there's a lot of reasons why they fell apart. I always blame the players. No, I'm kidding. Part of the reason why it fell apart is because the main reason we did not have a strong session 0. It was my first time running the system. I needed to be more upfront and clear with what I was shooting for, what the kind of vibe I was going for, so that when the players made their characters, like, oh, make whatever you want. That wasn't what they should have been doing. They should have been doing stuff like, I think if they had been a little bit more geared toward what your typical adventure style is, I think they would have had a better time. Anyway, so that's where everything I've just ranted about comes from, with like being able to be a lexicographer. I think one of the characters actually did that, and it was interesting, but at the end of the day, like, you're also like, you're traveling across land, like you might get attacked by this. And at some point you're doing that kind of stuff, right? And so if you're a thatcher, are you ready for it? You might not be. Depending on what skill, what occupation you take, you get sort of a basics of skills. What you're going to see, I don't know if it's very legible. You get like piloting 4, whether, see, it's sort of, it's sort of, what that means is it's sort of like telling you like you're going to get a multiplier. These numbers after the skill are a multiplier of how much like your base skill gets augmented to get your final starting skill level. So automatic skills, like family skills, there's different ways, you get to pick different ones. You get optional skills, psionics, boo. Again, like I don't want to go like, and this is how you do this moment by moment, life expectancies, menopause, like again, like detail. Weight gain. I feel like I'm seen. I don't know if you need stuff like this. Gout, I'm definitely being seen. Again, I don't know if you need stuff like this, but it's giving you a basic age at when this stuff starts to happen. Fleshes out the world, if nothing else. Let's see. So yeah, there you go. There's like, you can be a cleric if you want to start. There's the different gods. You can see if you choose different gods, then you get your specific multipliers. Initiative ×5, unarmed 5, axe, sickle 4, club, mace 5. So you see what's going on there. You could, yeah. So it's then going to go into like military careers. Again, like if I were setting up an adventure, if I wanted my players to have the most likely chance of functioning throughout the adventure, and this includes like the published adventures for Harn, I'd probably lean a little bit more towards your classic classes, priest, military careers, stuff like that, guards, thieves. I think there's a thief. There's some kind of, because one of my players was kind of a thievy character. So there must be some kind of friends and enemies, blah, blah, blah. Is there? I guess there's like a, I thought I just saw something, but you got like clerics, heralds, like this kind of stuff could be interesting. A locksmith, you could sort of divert into like a thievy kind of character. Hunter trapper could be interesting. Anyway, it doesn't matter. But I would, at least your first time running it, playing it, I might steer my players toward that if I had to do it over again. So again, military careers, it gives you breakdowns of how like military groups are laid out. So that's sort of character creation. Then you get into the skills. So like I said, it's a D100 system. It's not anything actually crazy, but what they do is, Columbia Games is like a war game company, right? Like Matt, Patrick, and I are all war gamers as well. Mostly Matt and Patrick. I don't do it as often. War games, especially the rule books, can have like a lot of acronyms. And I think they do that because they know they're going to have to repeat stuff a lot. Again, if you're wondering what I'm doing, I'm checking to see if you can see the mic in frame. If I put my dumb shiny forehead behind it and I don't see any black really, then I know I'm okay. So yeah, you're going to see like OMLs, SBs, MLs, EMLs, and you're just like, okay. It seems very daunting at first, and I can tell you as somebody who's not very bright, I was able to wrap my head around it. And then partly because I have experience with the D100 systems, but partly because skill index, SI, because it's sort of not reinventing the wheel. So the basic idea is you have a skill base. In Mithras, you would take like intelligence and strength, and that would be your base for something, right? Here, what they do is, I think it might be certain things get averaged, and then you multiply that. So in Mithras, they're adding them together to get you a starting number. Here, you can sort of see strength, agility for acrobatics, or acting, agility, voice, intelligence, right? And I think what you're doing is you're taking those and you are averaging them. Then If you have a certain sun sign, you get a bonus. So say you had like 12, 12, 12. So your average would be 12. If you were either one of these sun signs, you would get a +1. So that makes it a 13. So then your opening stat would be that 13 times 2. So you'd start with a 26. That would be your starting skill in acting. Certain things you're better at, like initiative, is often skill base 4, but you could see like when we were looking at clerics, it could be 5. Those, I believe, when something's in your character class, whatever, it overrides what's here. So certain clerics have initiative 5, so you change that 4 to a 5. But again, it's agility, will. What I like about this is that, like, so in Mithras, it's just combining 2, right? This, I think, without adding a ton of effort, adds a little more nuance. So you can wait, so like in this case, initiative is agility, will. Yes, it's partly, a big part of when you move in combat is going to be your speed, your how nimble are you, whatever. Physically, how can you do it? A lot of it, though, is your courage, right? And this, if you want it to be, can even be like, yeah, it's actually a little bit more courage than physical skill. And so I like that. I like that nuance. And the only time it really puts any like extra weight on the system is character creation. So like character creation, like I said, is where a lot of your work's going to happen. And then once you're up and running, most of it's fine. Or like bow. This is interesting. Usually bow, it would be like strength and dex, right? But because this system has stats for all your senses, it also includes eye. And what's interesting about that is, so if you take a physical injury, like you say you get your eye injured, you can, you could sort of realistically, like, it's not that I've gotten slower or lost a step or I'm not as flexible or whatever it is. It's because I took a wound. And so like there's other ways you could do it, right? But this way, it's sort of baked into your character that whenever you need to see something, it takes it into account, right? So I kind of like that. Yeah, you can get specialties. I think that's optional. Yeah, it's optional. And so I think if you name the special, I think there's a way you can do it. So like if you're a specialty with a battle axe and you're trying to use a hand axe, maybe there's a little bit of a ding, but again, it's optional. Yeah, more skills. Skill testing. So basically, like I was saying, you're trying to roll, and like a lot of D100s, there's like, obviously I was saying critical failure, marginal failure, success, critical success. Yeah. How do you advance skills? Advancing skills is slow. It's pretty slow. Oh, universal penalty. This is the system for like, how you modify your skills. So I gotta say, penalties show up pretty quickly. You get encumbrance penalties for wearing armor. Usually, even if you're wearing a little bit, it's gonna do a -5 or a -10 ding on certain things. There's 2 penalties. There's a universal penalty, which they'll often call UP. There's a physical penalty, which they call PP. And universal, you can see, includes injury, fatigue. Physical is mostly encumbrance. And the reason why they sort of separate it out like that is because they want to make it so that, like, if you ditch your shield, the weight comes off and that lowers your penalty, right? They want it to have that extra little bit of crunch. You can take your helmet off, right? You can do all sorts of stuff like that. You can drop your backpack. That's why in this game, backpacks are important. You drop your backpack and suddenly you've dropped 20 pounds, right? You go get your backpack after you fight. They wanted to have that detail. And like, I think, I don't know where I mentioned it. My brother and I were playing a survival RPG cooperatively on the PC called Outward. And that was one of the things they did. They had backpacks. And when you got into a fight, unless it was a backpack specifically that it was designed to be more combat friendly, you'd want to ditch it. Carry out the fight, go back and get it. So I really like that. Skill development, whatever. List of all the skills. And a lot of these, they give you like little tables, like, if you want some stuff for fishing, so you're not just sort of floating on your own how to make it work. But again, yeah, skills. That's the blue section. Combat, mental conflict's interesting. because yeah, you can sort of resist possession and stuff like that. So, and again, it's not hard, but I'm not going to a listening and hearing test. It's like hearing times 2. These are how you sort of do the. Oh, interesting. This is trying to make it so like this is a multiplier of your stats. So in this case, it would be a D100. I thought in certain things you would roll a 3d6. It's not always 100% consistent. So yeah, I guess with attribute testing, there's like how easy is it? And so the modifier, if it's really hard, it's only ×1. But I guess okay, I forgot. I thought, but I know sometimes you're rolling 3d6s against stats. But here you're getting so mental conflict. You're getting your first look at this, right? And all this is just a comparison chart of success levels, but it gets, again, much like EML, OML, like all these acronyms, they start getting like, you're getting like, oh, wait a minute, what does this mean? You're getting like these results that don't say, oh, I take 1d6 damage. What it's telling you is you take fatigue level. So like they both take 4 fatigue, they both take 3, they both take 2. And fatigue, does almost exactly what you expect it to. So combat, certain weapons are easier to use, like your hand or arm. You're going to get a skill base ×4 to use it. So if your skill base is like, 16, it's going to be like a 64. It's relatively easy to throw a punch. But certain weapons like a ball and chain might require a lot more skill. So if you can sort of see if it's coming through, it's a skill base ×1. So it's a very difficult weapon to use. I'm really nervous that this is, well, it's autofocus. What can I do? So they also have like attack and defense bonuses. Certain weapons are better at certain things. So like you can see shields have like an attack bonus of 5, but a defense bonus for a tower shield of 25. And that's something that sort of comes up, like I think in Caernathalis, right? When I did some of the solo stuff on that, and some of the group play with Duck from the Discord. Certain weapons give you certain bonuses depending on what you're doing. This has that too. Like obviously this game's much older, so you can see where this might have been, or this style might have been an inspiration for what Caernathalis was trying to accomplish. There's also weapon quality. Weapon quality is a system that you can use for weapon breakdown, weapon degradation if you want. I think it's optional. With Columbia games, often optional rules are listed in the side columns, so you don't have to use them. This is how they do their war games. What I've heard about weapon quality is that it's a little too, I think players find it a little too aggressive. So I think a lot of people either don't use it or they homebrew it so that weapons don't break down quite as fast. They sort of change it a little bit so it's a little less punitive, but whatever. What's interesting about armor, you can sort of see here, all the areas of armor you get to wear: abdomen, back, calves, chest. There's a lot, right? Each one is a section that can be hit. I don't know if it can be targeted, but it can definitely be hit and take the blow. And it'll tell you like what, like a hauberk covers the forearms, the elbow, the upper arm. So it tells you what it covers, right? This is, again, part of what makes character creation a little bit daunting, because you need to sort of get all this stuff calculated, worked out, figured out, blah, 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 before you go. The other thing you can do, which I thought was really interesting, is you can layer armor. I'm trying, a little spoiler. I want to do this. I want this to have 2 parts. I want the first part to be me talking about the books. I want the second part to be me talking about the Foundry VTT module. Because I think what this game does is, at the table, I think it is pretty daunting. On a VTT, I think it becomes way more manageable thanks to all the really great efforts and I'll get into it when I get into that, because I don't know the info off the top of my head. But so hopefully I can show that too at some point. But yeah, you can layer armor. It's you can have, if you want, you can have against different type of damage fire, like plates. Really good against an edge, but really not great against fire. Built might be better against fire. So you can sort of set it up like that. Armor can have quality, damage. When you have armor, combat movement, and typical walk, jog, run, sprint, whatever. This is something reaction zones and long reach weapons are two optional rules I think work well. Mithras has a thing where like certain weapons have reach. And so you don't just hit like in the space next to you, you can hit like one space away. This game has that as well, which I think is a nice touch. So if you've got like a halberd, you can sort of, you get a little range to it. I like that. Reaction zones says it's an area of potential influence. This is sort of a wargamey idea where it's like a zone of control. So if you have like a piece here, you have a piece here and you have like spaces all around it, you assume this piece sort of influences the ones around it. That's sort of what this is in an RPG. I don't know if I've ever really seen that before for me. That maybe other games have picked that up, but yeah, I hadn't seen that before personally in an RPG, but I thought that was interesting. And as a war gamer, I thought, most of my players could handle it. But basically in combat, it's, you pick an action, defender picks an action, you roll, and then you compare your results on these tables, right? So again, like I keep saying, like this game makes it seem like it's really intimidating. It's not. It's just presented in a way that I think is really unfamiliar to role players, but not unfamiliar to war gamers. So like if the defender wants to block, counterstrike, dodge, or ignore, sure, you ignore for different reasons, like because you're trying to save an action for later or something. Attacker is going to attack. If you want, you can aim. That's why I don't know if you can, like, you might be able to specify like thorax, but I don't know if that's 100% true. But I definitely know you can go like high, low, or mid, and you can see like you get a -10 to try and pull that off. If you just go straight attack, you're fine. But you can see like if you aim low, you can't hit like from here up, right? It just takes it off the table. Same with high in the opposite direction. But yeah, and so you can sort of see like CF is a critical failure, marginal success, critical success. Same thing down this side. You compare the results you get, say like a critical success against a marginal success. That's an A*1. That means the attacker strikes. You get a +1 bonus, I think, to the effective impact. But yeah, you end up getting like a +1 bonus. You can get like, if you get a critical success and they ignored it, you get like a 4 bonus. That can be really high. You can get defensive tactical advantage, which means, the defender flips this script and gets to attack back instead of having to defend itself. Again, concepts that are not crazy, but it's sort of presented in a way that I think will make people sort of stop for a minute. But once you realize it's just like almost any other D100 kind of game, it's with some more detail, you're fine. But yeah, like injury table, you don't have hit points, which I kind of like. So you determine your effective impact, assuming you hit. So you might get like a +3 here. So critical strike, defender tried to counter strike, but they had a marginal failure, which means they didn't protect themselves. They were going all in trying to get you back. It didn't work out. So the attacker gets the strike and they're going to get a 3 advantage maybe on their injury table. So you're trying to roll certain numbers, they get modified. You see where you hit, right? Boom, boom, boom. And then, you have like minor, serious, grievous, kill. So you can sort of see, and then these 5s are like wound levels and et cetera, et cetera. I think you can see like these little symbols here. The diamonds mean there's a fumble or a stumble roll. Stumble roll, I think a fumble would roll as if you screwed up, but a stumble roll, I think, is if you hit them, you can sort of have a chance to knock them down a little bit. Amputation, like if you amputate at the neck, you can sort of imagine what that means. It's a K5, it's a kill shot. So on certain ones, you run the risk of causing that kind of permanent injury. But so again, injury determination, injury levels, That's what I was just talking about with the K5. There's like little, again, like I say, if you want the details there, like bows and precipitation, that's an optional rule. Got to keep your bowstring dry because if it gets wet, it doesn't work as well. Like you can do that air temperature. You don't have to worry about it. It's there if you want it. I've heard that the difference between HarnMaster Columbia Games and HarnMaster Gold is that Gold sort of codifies some of these more optional, more detailed things into the normal rules. I don't know if that's 100% true. I've heard it's a little more detailed. But some people say it's not that bad, and some people say the detail really helps. I have no idea. Mounted combat, it's got it all there. Tactical advantage, again, jousting, great. Healing on my first read was a little complicated because, again, you're trying to get... you have like injury levels, and you're trying to like... I don't know if it's reduced. I always got them flipped. So like you're either trying to go high or trying to go low. I guess you're trying to go high. Usually you would expect, oh, you want the healing, but here's the healing rate. There's also the injury level, and you're reducing the injury levels when it's successful. But if it's I think it's healing rate, you want that to be higher. So sometimes it's going back and forth in different directions. Again, EML is your effective mastery level. So I was like saying there's OML, which is your opening mastery level. Your effective mastery level is basically like the stat you're rolling against after modifiers. So if it's a 40 is your opening mastery level, you get a plus 10. That means your EML, your effective mastery level, is a 50. You're trying to beat a 50. It's a lot of acronyms I don't know. I think it makes it feel a little more obtuse than it is. So, but yeah, psionics, boo. I honestly don't know if I've ever read them because I skip over it. Because I don't want psionics in my thing. So then you have a campaign section, weather generation and counter generation. It's all, again, trying to be more simulationist. In my random event tables, and this is for like future history, and I'll get into that in a little bit. I found they worked really well. I thought they gave a lot of options. You know, you've got mobs and crowds, guilds, like who you're running into, highway encounters. Is it a wilderness encounter? Is it night? Is it day? You know, they give you a lot of little things like that. So, little tracking sheet. Again, the months of the year. The treasure tables I also thought were pretty good. You get a lot of random common gems, rare gems. You know, you can start putting together, especially in a VTT, if you sort of type the tables out, you can sort of have it and sort of cascade through the options and generate a final major artifacts. Again, whatever. I thought it worked really well. They've got a bestiary. I guess it's bestiary. I think Matt and I had this discussion once, like idiots. They give you a basic list of creatures. You can see them here. They're stat blocks, right? So horses, but that's the thing, like horses, goats. I don't know if we need seals. We could probably use more of other things like lycanthropes or ivashu, which is one of their sort of features, but cattle. So as a bestiary, I don't know if a lot of that is Gargoon is their sort of orc or goblin. So they're often like out in the wild. They have tribes, they have sort of cultures, but they're often considered like your typical like plaguing the trade route or something like that. But they have societies. They have so different types of orcs. So you got them as sort of your stand-in bad guy if you need them. Ivashu are sort of these like mystical creatures. But yeah, anyway. That's the basic of the, and again, at the end, they sort of give you sort of like this summary set of tables for combat. And I'll just show you the character sheet really quickly. You can see like you have this skill base, because if the skill base changes, then your mastery level has to change. So they want you to track both, but you can see like all the stuff you can, spells, rituals, check bar. So here's what I was saying, like compound layers, right? So if you're doing this by hand, you got to start figuring all this out. But once you figure it out, you're kind of good to go, right? Assuming you don't change anything. I have to confess, if I were a player playing pencil and paper, I'd be lazy and I'd never change anything because I wouldn't want to sit there and go like, okay, now I got to So, take that with as you may. I don't know exactly if that's good or bad, but there you go. But I think on the base level, it's a very good D100 system. It gives you the options to add crunch if you want it. If you don't want it, you can sort of keep some of that crunch pulled back. I think it's great. Here's why I really like it, though. And it's not like this, like, I'm going to tell you something you probably can't hear 12 other places. The setting for this game might be one of the most developed RPG settings I've ever seen. And what I think this game really shines at, and I'll show you an example near the end, is giving you little bits so that you have ideas start to fire off. This game, the setting is in, let's see if it shows you. The year that this game takes place in is always 700. All right, 700 is the starting point for this game. What I find interesting is I think they say, like, we will never include material that takes place after the year 700. Once 700 starts, that's when your game starts. The world is yours. Which I thought was kind of a nice touch. It's never like, oh, wait, did they just upgrade this or update that? And did that change the lore? You don't have to worry about it. What happens before 700 is detailed in a way that most RPGs are not, but what happens afterwards is entirely up to you. Harn is an island. Sort of like, Australia, right? It's like, it's significant, but it's not like tiny like Long Island or whatever. But it's got all these kingdoms in it: Meldurin, Kabisa, Kaldor, Asmodeer. Asmodeer is the dwarf area. You can see they sort of shove it off to the side. Maybe there's some elves over there as well, but that's the thing. It's like sort of like it's off in the corner. And there's different things. So each area sort of has its own vibe. Kaldor is your classic medieval Game of Thrones. The Thardic Republic is more like a Bronze Age republic, like Rome, whatever. Orbal is sort of like the Northern Wildlands that might have a little bit more. Is it more magic, or is that down here? I forget which. Retham might be like this lawless, thieves world gone wrong kind of. So each area, Kabisa, Kabisa, I think is this area that's being sort of. I think Meldurin is a little more of the magic-y, wizardy area. Kaldor, Meldurin are sort of, I think, vying for control over that central area. So you can sort of see, like a lot of RPG settings, like Pathfinder, probably D&D, I don't know. They're trying to cover all their bases. You want like a Bronze Age Republic, you got it. You want like a Wildlands, you got it. You want a more magic area, you got it. You want Game of Thrones, you got it. And I think it's one of those things where, like, they're trying to make it, good for everybody. It doesn't have, in that regards, like a really strong, might be overstating, a really strong point of view. Each area has a really strong point of view, but as a setting, it's trying to be a little bit of a catch-all, so that if you want to set an adventure of X type, you can just find a place to do it. Pathfinder is very much this: swamps, deserts, whatever. Frog people. It's like whatever kind of adventure you want to tell, you can find a place in Pathfinder's world where it makes sense, and you just set it there. They want that to sort of, for me, I that's sort of how I've always seen Traveler, right? But Traveler's sort of kitchen sink approach makes it so that I get overwhelmed and ideas don't fire off for adventures of like, well, this sci-fi setting could be anything. And I'm like, sci-fi is hard for me, and I need a little bit more of a guardrail to help me figure out the kinds of stories I want to tell, which is why I think I was talking about with Hostel, why I like the Hostel setting compared to Traveler, because it gives you a little more, this is what this is, and then in my head I start to picture things. Where a traveler, it's like, do you want to be a lion person? Do you want to have like dukes and duchesses on a planetary? I'm just like, I don't know. No, I don't, but you know. Harn, though, I don't know if they're going to have a map of the whole world. Harn, though, when you see the whole world, which is in HarnMaster Gold, it's big. And Harn is a very small part of it, even though Harn itself feels big. So they're going to give you details about all the areas, like quick overviews. Give you more details about. It's going to be tons of settings. So what's also nice about Harn World is that it is rule set independent. Obviously, it's meant to be played with HarnMaster, but you can go on Drive Through RPG and there's like D20, I think. I don't know if it's 5e D20, but there's like D20 conversions, you know, that you can either download for free or buy. I'm not sure which. But what this is going to tell you is how literally everything works. Forest law. I mean, are we doing like It's Always Sunny bird law next? I don't know. But if you need that answer, it's probably in here. So, and the reason why I like that is because most of the time you're not going to need it, but it's like, man, I wonder how, like, if I stole a pheasant from somebody like a nobleman's forest, what would that be like? Oh, you know, I don't have to make up some kind of anything. You can if you want, but if you don't want to, it's here. You got a Harn Dex. Oh, sorry. So yeah, and it's telling you some of the history. There's a lot of history. It gives you history of all the areas. It's overviews, and I'll show you why in a bit, because they give you more detail elsewhere. There's also a Harn Dex, which is basically just like a dictionary for Harn stuff. Like what's the Genin Trail? It tells you where it is on the map. Trail used by travelers between Thay and Tashal, named after the semi-legendary mage Genin. Although the connection with him is obscure, the unpaved trail is rough, rutted, and often muddy. So, you know, they sort of tell you stuff like that. The Harn Dex is probably most of this book. And I used to have it printed out separately, like in a spiral, and I remember it was pretty significant. But it tells you like different areas, different people, different locations, just tons and tons of like little overviews. Even you can see like City of Tashal, it tells you where it is on the map and gives you a little picture of it, just to, you know, so you're not left in the dark completely. So yeah, so that's this. If there was anything, oh yeah, here you go. Lithia is the world, and this is a language map, right? So let's see if I can do this without. This is Harn, right? And this is all of, is it Lithia? Celestia? I don't know. But you can get an idea of just how big this world is. And HarnMaster Gold sort of has reigns over all of this. Columbia's HarnMaster is specific to this area. And honestly, I find this to be plenty, but you can start, and I assume if you want, it's Lithia, I guess. I assume if you wanted to, you could just, you know, use HarnMaster Gold material with Columbia's 3rd edition HarnMaster. I assume like it's not that different. Yeah, so it gives you sort of like, oh yeah, here you go. Kathira. Yeah, Lithia, is just this, and then you can see, okay, so Kathira is the whole world. And yeah, again, there's Harn. So again, relatively small of all things considered, but still plenty there. They give you tectonics and volcanism. Do you need it? No. Star charts, do you need it? Probably not. But yeah, this is your classic Harn map. Harn uses hexes, combat, everything. Again, wargaming company, probably makes sense. I like it. Makes it a little easier. So there you go. HarnWorld. So the setting is really detailed. So let me show you an example of, you know, I was saying like it fires off ideas. So let me show you an example of that. Well, you know what, before I do that, let me just burn through a couple things. Like, again, you want detail. They have a book on how manors run, right? Manor events, you know, like household servants. How does this work? Tenant offices. What's the structure? So if you want it, like I was saying in Hostel, I kept buying more and more books, you know, until I had what I felt was enough information for everything to start taking shape. I bought all these books just because I was fascinated by it. And then if it ever came up, I was like, yeah, let me just look it up. So again, how to run a manor. barbarian tribes, if you want to make barbarian characters, details about, all the barbarian tribes that roam the Pilot's Almanac. If you want to do like maritime, if you want to do trading, if you want to, be a shipwright, life at sea, what's it like, again, like, and these aren't like insignificant books. This book is, they have page numbers. It's like 40, 50, 60 pages each. The two that might be the most integral, like all those are fine, right? It might be worth getting magic and religion. For me, mostly religion. I think this is meant to be sort of like a low magic setting. But, it sort of gives you spells. The Roman numeral is its sort of spell circle, its difficulty. You take that number, you multiply it by 5. That's the negative modifier for casting the spells against your spell skills. You can get, depending on what kind of like spell circle you're trying to cast, if you're sun sign, you might get bonuses or minuses, stuff like that. Mages here are called Shekpavar. That's, if you're wondering. Inventing spells, so spell design, so it gives you all the stuff like that. I like the idea of the setting being low magic, so I don't really, but priests, I thought, could be more useful and more widespread. And so again, it's going to talk about religions, cleric skills, which are hinted at in the core rulebook a little bit, but here it's, repeated and fleshed out. There's, again, more detail on divine intervention, rituals. There's rules for death. Piety points are a little more fleshed out, including, I think, if you anger your god or something, making the request. Shades, ghosts. Yeah, I don't know where it is, but yeah, there's rules for death. When you die, you don't have to just die. You can have like this little sort of mini moment where like you run to the light and certain things happen. But again, prayers that have, again, Roman numeral for their difficulty level. I found this to be a little bit more, I don't know why, and maybe it's because I grew up playing the video game Darklands. This kind of stuff doesn't strike me as magic-y as magic spells. It's just taking something that already exists in the world and just assuming it was like more real or whatever level of real you want it to be. But yeah, so again, gives you a ton of different religious sects that you can pull from. They all have their list of prayers, but again, a lot of detail, especially if you're going to have like a cleric kind of class. It's almost like they have their own book. I'll show you this. I don't know if this is like second edition, third. I don't know if this is still relevant. At one point they, put out a player's guide. You don't need this. I don't actually know why I have this. I thought it was interesting. I don't even take it out of the plastic, but it is a book meant to focus on just the player, and you don't have to. But I don't even know. Maybe you can buy this in PDF. I don't know. But what Columbia Games has been really good about recently, as I knock everything down, is, like I said, they've been doing a lot on Kickstarter, and they did that HarnWorld. They've been putting out books for each of the areas of the world. So this is Azadmir, which is the dwarven area. So even though it is sort of pushed off to the side, if you want tons of detail, it's in shrink still. I'll show you ones that aren't in shrink soon. So they've got the Kingdom of Azmadir. I think the one that just got finished, not shipped yet, is Kybisa, which was that little area between Kaldor and that was sort of being Medellin or whatever. Oh, Meldorin. Okay. Once you pick where you're going to set your campaign, you pick the book, you're good to go. It's going to give you more information you could possibly ever want. Or if you realize, okay, I need to pick up and move, like my players are about to move here, you grab the next book, get some background information, get ready to go. I've been collecting these like Time Life books, or like it says Encyclopedia Harnica, like an encyclopedia set. I don't know if I need all of them, but I'm going to collect all 12, if you know what I mean. So there's Meldorin, there's Orbal. Orbal is that wild area to the north, which I sort of feel like is like Scottish Highlands or something. But again, same idea. You're going to get who these people are. You're going to get locations, history, maps. You know, you're going to get NPCs like the miller in this town is named Per Taraskeld. He's quite good at a 4, but his prices are high. You know, so you're going to get a lot of things. I don't know if you always get like a little... Oh, adventure hooks. So when I was talking about like the game sort of inspired coming up with ideas. This is how, like, they give you little ideas like this. And for me, at least, they worked really well. I'll give you this sort of a walkthrough of how I did it in a minute, like how it worked out for me. But it was what initially, like, I got through the rules. I was like, okay, I think I get it. I think even though the rules seem this or that, I think I get it. You know, I think I'm grokking the rules. They're not as complicated as I thought. And so now let me see if I can find a starting adventure. So usually I'll buy starting adventures to get an idea of like, okay, what is it that they're trying to run? And, you know, because I don't know the world yet, so let me get something pre-printed. So I grabbed a couple of things, and then all of a sudden I was like, wait, this? Oh, that could be that? Oh, this is a good... Oh, that connects to there, I think, if I wanted to. You know, so that started to happen, and these adventure hooks, I thought, really fired off ideas for me personally. So it's what made me fall in love with the system, is the setting and the way they give you these little bits of information in the right way to make you realize, oh, you're not just telling me that this, you know, Thatcher makes good roofs. You're also telling me that at night he can often be seen wandering in the woods. Why? You know, it's up to you, but like, oh. But yeah, and also if you think about that, but then you connect this, you know, that's what I mean. So yeah, you've got, also I gotta say, like, really nice maps. They're sort of, I think they're well made. They're also detailed in a way that is informative, not just like aesthetic. Like, do you need to know that the peak of there is 2690? Probably not, but like, it's not just like evocative. It's functional as well. Or ball. Yeah, I wonder how much I was muted for. I'll figure that out in post. What do we got? We got Tharda, the Republic of Tharda. I think I was telling you sort of like I thought it was a little more Bronze Agey, maybe not, but it's one of the areas still in shrink. Retham, this is sort of like the total anarchist area. You can see right there. It's not pretty, you know, right from the cover, but I think this could be an interesting setting for me personally. I don't know if other people would like it. Like, the Republic of Tharda is still in shrink because I'm like, oh, it seems very stable and calm. Maybe I should look more into it, but this seems like it's just literally on fire. So that could, you know, strikes me as interesting. But anyway, the one I started out in is Caldor. Caldor, you know, if you remember from the map, is sort of like your classic medieval Game of Thrones, whatever. And give you information of all the different, like, sort of cities within the group. Like, Olaconda is a city. We'll get into that in a little bit. Get into the keeps. Who's in the keep? You know, like Baron Uthris Pierstil is a renowned warrior and enjoys hunting. This guy was part of my story, or at least his sect was. They're going to give you information about the city. Tashal's the city, you can see. And then they changed the numbering, so Tashal 6. So, you know, on page 6 of the city section. Give you maps, details about, like, the castle where the king lives, who's in the castle, stuff like that. God damn, this is going to be more annoying to fix and post than I intended. I like these to just be hit play and go, but my voice goes so badly that I end up jamming myself up. Like, I got to mute again. Okay. I don't know how people do it. Like, I listen to, like, Jeff Gerstmann, his podcast. He does video games, and the guy talks for like 3 hours at a time. I don't know how much editing there is, but I never feel like his voice is just falling apart like 30 minutes in, the way mine does. Gives you, again, we're on page 62 of the city, so tons of information about the city. Gives you the map of Tashal and its local area. It shows you where it is in, like, the continent as a whole. This is an overview of the whole city. Tunnels, you know, tons of information. So let me tell you now how this worked for me and what. So I grabbed the rules. And I'm like, okay, I think I get it. I think it makes sense. Let's figure this out. Let me buy a couple of adventure modules. So I'm like, okay. I grab a bunch, skim through them, and the one I land on is called 100 Bushels of Rye. Okay. It's designed as an intro adventure. It takes place in the area of Loban. Loban is a little community outside the bigger city Olakant. Okay, so that's where I've started, right? So you can go and you can then buy information about Olakant, because like I said, there's tons of material out there. A lot of it official, but a lot of it, you can see this is written by N. Robin Crosby. So this would be official, but I think they're pretty welcoming to user contributions. I don't know if they make them official, but users contribute tons and tons of words to describing areas of this world that don't get filled in officially. So this is HarnWorld 5618. So I know that I've got the Kingdom of Kaldor. I know it takes place in Loban, which is outside the city of Olakand, right? So I've got this information to start with. And I'm like, okay. I read the adventure module. And the adventure module itself ends up, I don't want to say bog standard, right? That's too, I don't mean that in like a derogatory sense, but for a world that's full of all this detail and all this setting and all this stuff, this adventure is very much like something is X and you got to go here to kill Y or figure it out, right? Like it's not like palace intrigue. It's not like a roaming band of minstrels. It's very much a like get out there and adventure. They give you the people. Is this Olakon? No, this is the adventure. Okay. So they give you, they give you maps for the different locations. Like you can see, like, oh, we're going to go into this area and we're going to explore this map, right? Like it's a mine. So there's a lot of details like that. You got the Loban Manor House for, just general information. They give you information about the village. So I'm looking all this over and, and then I go, I think, yeah. So then so I'm like, okay. And so they start talking about like, an overview of the mission, right? Loban is located in Ambarnis 100. The sheriff instructs his bailiff to send a party to Loban Manor to resolve difficulties and return to Olakon Castle with a report and the rye. So the town is supposed to be paying a tribute of 100 bushels of rye to Olakon, and it has not. That's the setup. Okay. Okay, there we go. They give you ideas of why you get the encounter. It doesn't matter. Okay, so again, it's like a little nugget. 100 bushels of rye need to be transported as like a tax or whatever. They're not doing it. Why? Here's where it all started to start making connections. It started figuring things out. They give you like recent events, right? They give you a little background. Loban Village was founded 80 years ago. It's the last outpost on civilization on the Fur Road. Okay, all of a sudden you're like, okay, so it's starting to fill in a little bit of detail. It's not just that it's a small town. It's the edge. It's the edge of this little civilized area before the road enters into the wild on a road to Orbal to the north, right? So all of a sudden you got a little bit more, something that's a little bit more interesting than just a small town that has to pay 100 bushels of rye. Let me see. What else do you have? You have like a leader who is running the town. He gets killed in 689. Like I said, anything before 700, they write down. After 700, it's up to you. You've got a son that inherited the estate. But then they start explaining the recent events, and the recent events have not been kind to Loban, and it's partly because Sir Cathal is a little bit incompetent, right? He's not his father. So that you have that. Okay, so you have a small town that needs to pay a tax and hasn't. Why? The town is located on this really interesting area. Okay, it's run by an idiot. So all of a sudden you're starting to get all these things. And what I started to realize was that the recent events and the present situation were actually more interesting than the adventure that they plugged into it gives credit for. Like this could be, I was setting this up to be like an entire mini campaign. And I'll try and maybe show you a little bit if I can get into the VTT. So all of a sudden I was like, oh my God, like the adventure for this is just this little like go here and explore. But the setup for it involves politics with the barbarians. It involves an incompetent leader of the town. It involves this frontier area that, you know, has dangers around it, you know, just all these things. And I was like, oh my God, like this is so much going on here. And I'm glad, but again, like if it was just an adventure module, it would have just been like a couple of maps, the monster, and what are we doing? But because it's Harn, they give you a ton of detail. They give you backstory. They give you history. They flesh so much stuff out so that all of a sudden I'm like, oh yeah. Oh yeah. And so by the end, like I said, I had this whole mini campaign planned out. So now I'm like, okay, I realize what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell the story that leads up to the moment the published adventure starts, all the recent events. And they give you enough that you can make that happen. So we're going to so now I know like we're going to need Olakand. So I look at Olakand. I'm trying to get information here. So, you know, you get the map of the city, like, you know, typical thing. Nicely done. Like the bridge has a history. It's built by dwarves a long time ago. There's like a town favorite turtle that lives under, you know, stuff like that, little detail. But you start getting information here. So you start going through like who's in the town, you know, who's running the town. The town is run by one of the bastard sons of the king. I'm like, oh, so maybe there's something about the 100 bushels of rye that's this bastard son trying to curry favor for the king. Or maybe he's just trying to show he's competent as the succession gets ready to happen and this is jamming him up. They talk about there's a festival, the Olakand Festival. They give you a little adventure you can do in the festival, but I'm sitting there going like, okay, there's a festival starting. Maybe this is a festival where the son's trying to curry favor with the king. He's trying to impress him. He's trying to show he's competent. He's running things well. This 100 bushels of rye thing seems like something he could have handled. He can't. And it's making him look stupid. And it has to be handled by the festival because I'm trying to... You see what I'm saying? These things start to come into focus. And so I'm like, okay, so the people are going to be starting in Olakand. Why are they going to Loban? Well, because part of the festival in the details they tell you is that they make a big deal out of this festival. So the finest knights of Olakand hand carry the invites, and it's like the social event of the year in the kingdom. And so all the knights are busy, you know, hand delivering these Heidi Klum Halloween party invitations. So I'm like, okay, so that leaves like there's nobody left to, because this festival's got to take precedence because it's an avenue to impress his father. So the players end up being, and here's where it fell apart. I knew the players were going to be picked to do this task, which is supposed to be menial, and it's not. So they're sort of fish out of water, but like one player was a cook. I'm sitting there going like, I don't think they would send a cook, but I'm not going to jam everybody up. What I should have done is like, you're all like lowly knights. You're all lowly foot soldiers. I should have in a session 0 said, you need to be this kind of character. Don't pick a stable boy. Don't pick a cook. And I failed. And that ended up biting us later on. 2 characters. And they're probably the more experienced role players in the group. It's hard to say. One person picked the more thievy kind of guy. And you're like, okay, I can see how that could play out. Another guy picked sort of a more castle intrigue kind of guy, which wasn't exactly a good fit, but he had stuff to do that he wanted to do. So he wasn't jammed up. Some of the players are like, yeah, I don't know what I would do. You know, I'm like, I get it. Like I failed at the session 0. Anyway. So you have the Olakand Festival. So again, things are starting to piece together. As I'm reading through people, I stumble across Daban of Cressel. He's married with 4 children, quality of 2, so he's not really that good. He's a usurer, a mercantiler. He's a nervous man who specializes in short-term loans. Last summer, he financed a riskier venture, a caravan of woolen products, parchment and vellum supplies, dyes, and some metal goods bound for Orbal to the north. with instructions to trade for rare furs, whale oil, and walrus ivory. The caravan is long overdue, and Daban fears that half of his working capital may be lost. I read all of them, but that was when I was like, aha, okay. So we've got a leader of the town who wants to impress his father, and he's going to go all out at this festival. He's trying to maybe get a gift, or maybe this guy's trying to get a gift for this festival in order to raise his status. Maybe he promised the lord of this town that he could get something that the lord thought would really impress his father from Orbal. And everybody's dropping the ball. Like, so you see what I mean? Like, so you have all these things happening that sort of fill in the detail. And because I knew I was going to make this not just about the literal thing, but I was going to make it about the area, I could start filling in like, okay, here's something. The characters are tasked with going to Loban to say, why haven't you paid us yet? You start to figure out why, because of the recent events. Because this is going on, this mine is shut down, this is why we got to deal with all this, we don't have it. Also, at the same time, there's a caravan with really high value goods that's gone. Is it in here somewhere? It's very important to the lord of this town or to this particular merchant. So you start, and then, there's, if you deal with that, there's also like mercenaries. Brulin of Boylan. Brulin is a captain of the Anoth Rangers, a company of about 20 seasoned Lightfoot. They're well employed as guards for caravans. Oh. Maybe there's a conflict, like Daban is talking to Brulin, like, what the hell's going on, man? I paid you to make sure my caravan got here, and it's not here. So you see what I'm saying about how like things start to piece together? And so when all was said and done, I had, just through little bits of paragraphs and details and stuff like that, I had what I felt was like a sort of a functioning little corner of an open world. Does that make sense? And it was a joy to run. And had I think, set things up stronger in the beginning, I think we would have had a blast and played it for a long time. As it was, we got through about 12 sessions, and we started to realize, like, one player is like, the things that are starting to happen I could do in any fantasy game. Other players like, I've never known what my character should be doing. I don't know how to determine what I want, stuff like that. So, and we're like, you know what, do you guys want to stop? Everybody's like, yes. And I gotta say, maybe I'll bring it all back for Patrick and Matt, because I really enjoyed it, and I thought there's a lot of interesting things going on, and I'd be curious to see another take on it, especially now that I know, like, I need to be a little clearer up front with what's going on. But yeah. So as you can see, like, the rules are the rules. I don't go into super extensive detail about rules because I feel like rules tend to cover the same grounds, right? Like, it's, how does this rule set accomplish this same problem that most games have to face? So I don't bother, going into, but, get an overview. It's a D100 system, combat's opposed rolls, crunch, but that seems intimidating at first, but is really not when you put it into practice, especially if you're familiar with D100 systems. The setting, I think, is the genius. You can use it with any rule set, and you can sort of see what it did for me, like by sort of walking you through how this one adventure I was running came together. I'm just going to grab another drink. You know what I think it is? I think it's, so I have a Rode Streamer X right here. I don't know if I should have gotten like a little mini something else, but I was like, I got Rode upstairs. Let me try the Rode down here. I think what it is that I tap the mute button, and when I unmute, I'm tapping it, but I'm just not hitting it hard enough, and I don't realize I haven't activated it correctly. So I think that's what I got to be more careful about that. Anyway, so you can see sort of hopefully how all this comes together setting wise and why that appealed. It makes me curious to try other games with really fleshed out worlds like Warhammer Fantasy, things like that. But this world with its sort of low magic, not really elves, dwarves kind of setting really appeals to me, where I think Warhammer is much more classic fantasy, which is fine. But yeah, hopefully with that, you can get an idea of if Harn looks interesting to you at all, why I think it's great, what I think it does that other games don't necessarily do. Like, they'll present you with an adventure, but this presented me with the seeds that just allowed me to fill everything in. And for me personally, I feel like I rarely get that from RPG material. Maybe I just don't know enough systems or enough settings, but this really blew me out of the water. And I imagine like those little nuggets would probably be in any of those setting books. Like Orbal, sure, just find like the booklet on the city there and start digging through. There's not going to be published adventures. There's not actually a ton of published adventures that I know of. And all of them are kind of these introductory kind of things. I think they really, one is like a little murder mystery. One takes place on a boat. One is this, which I think is the best, but it's also the most expansive if you want it to be. So it's hard to say, but yeah, there's just some water running at the moment. So anyway, that's going to be the first part of this. Second part is going to be, I want to show you the VTT, because for a system that is not wildly popular, this game gets a lot of love on Foundry. It's really well done, and I think it takes this system from being something that might be intimidating to something that becomes much more manageable. Let me show you one last thing. You know, like, they have other things too. They have like, you can get like combat screens. You know, they've got that. They give you the basic tables as well. And because I got that HarnWorld Kickstarter, it came with this. It came with this sort of nice folio with some maps in it. So I tend to just leave them in here because, again, I play everything digitally, but there we go. So this is the first part. I'll try and get the second part going on the VTT. So we'll be right back. Thanks. Okay, so welcome back. Now you can see we've changed location. I'm back to where I normally do my Black Trivia Night stuff, my computer where I normally run stuff. What you're seeing here was the VTT setup that I used. You can see over on the side that sadly it's been 217 days since the last result. But I just wanted to quickly go into this. I don't want to get into too much detail with, actually, one thing before I forget. There's actually also a sci-fi version of the game called High Colonies. It's basically the Harn rule set in a sci-fi setting that takes place in our solar system in 23rd century. I thought it was interesting. I don't know if it would be my go-to sci-fi system, but I thought it was interesting. I thought it was cool to see the system used in a different way, because I'd sort of tried to homebrew a Middle Earth rule set. I didn't do it. Like, other people did the work, and then I built upon that. So, but yeah, you know, it focuses more on firearms, gives a lot of details about, you know, things in the solar system. It's good. I could see, as I make tons of noise, I could see using the rules, but maybe the setting from Transhuman Space. The Transhuman Space setting for GURPS is just, wow, so much to it. Anyway, so you're looking at the VTT. I, you know, grabbed, you know, some of the art. I probably bought this. I tried to buy stuff every time I can. So we've got the, you know, the Harn map, if I can activate it. I think I got this stuff. I bought this from Drive-Thru, or I got it as part of Kickstarters. They give you PDFs to go with it. So this is Harn, as you can see. This is the whole main continent, not the whole planet, but the main continent. Gives you the Harns right here. The rest is here. So great. I grabbed a bunch of towns we were running. You know, Laban, this was the main village I was telling you about, where you got to go to find out why they didn't figure out the 100 bushels of rye. Olakand is where the city, you can see where our players
last were. Uses hexes, as you can see, blah, blah, blah. Here's what I wanted to show you, though. Character sheets. There's character sheets, and then there's like the all-in-one combat. You can buy a module that does tarot cards. So I actually set up. Somebody made this on the internet, and I apologize. At the time I was just grabbing stuff. I wasn't publishing any of it to the internet, and so I came up with ways to do tarot. And I forget how I did it. I assume I had like a random table somewhere that I could just roll on, but anyway, that's not important. I brought this in. These are trackers. So, like I said, it's got a lot of detail, but it's not. There's a lot of little bits you can do, but none of them are very complicated. So if you want to have like weather generation, you roll, and then it sort of moves up and down. So it's not like random wild shifts, but it does feel natural, stuff like that. So anyway, the character sheets. So let me show you create actor. We'll do a test. So you can see a couple things. The facade is what other people see. You can see apparent age is not actual age. Maybe you look young, maybe you look old. All these things. This is what other people see when they encounter you. And I think if you set permissions to certain levels, other players will see this, but they won't be able to see any of this. If that makes sense. So if you because let me show you. You can set configure ownership. There's limited observer owner. I think if you make people either limited or observers, they can access this, including your picture, but they won't. So if you wanted to keep something a secret, you could. So you can see the profile. This is where things actually start to get dedicated to your character. You can mark your sun sign. And remember, like I was saying, it's based on the calendar. So you can sort of be between signs. They sort of build that in. You can sort of put down here, say you roll a 3d6. Boom, boom, boom. And this stat would be a 13. So you just sort of put it in there. And then once that's there, now you can do a couple different checks. You can either do a straight D6 roll. It's going to do 3d6 like a GURPS. And I can't remember why you do one over the other. And so as you can see, you're trying to roll under just like you are with the skills. But if you need to do a D100, this is going to do it times 5. So that's like your normal. But if you wanted to make it times 3, you got to do the math yourself. But, whoops, isn't letting me do it. Oh, whoops. Okay, so it's going to default to 5. Okay, so that's a little weird. 13, 26. So you'd have to do like a minus 26. If you wanted to be by like 3, right? So you can sort of see how that works. You can, 3d6 it for all your stats. It'll fill it in. You can fill this in. These are all text boxes. You just sort of click it and go. Skills, as you can see, if I were to start filling in all these numbers, let's just go 13 across the board. I'll do 14, 11, 12, make that a 10. I'll just make them whatever. Will, 11, eyesight, 11, hearing. Maybe I'm not very good at hearing in real life. That's true. Smell, 11, voice. Well, you hear me, right? Make that a 9. Comeliness, 10. Morality is not, you can choose your morality. That's not a stat you have to roll for. And depending on if you choose a 3, you're a scoundrel. If you choose an 18, you're a saint. So you can choose that. So once you do that, then you go over to your skills. You're going to start seeing like skill base, right? So climbing is strength, dex, agility, and then it gives you your sun sign bonus. So it takes all that into account to get your skill base of a 15. And then if you were to add So you have your skill base, and if your mastery level then became times 4, you'd make that a 60, right? So then you have your 60. If you were to roll it, get your target modifiers, boom, boom, boom. So it figures it all out, right? There's something called a skill index, which gets used for other things. And the way you do that is it's whatever the tens place is in your skill. That's your skill index. So my climbing skill is 60. It's got a skill index of 6. Sometimes that's used as some kind of modifier, stuff like that. But yeah, you can see like there's tons, so the combat, again, it covers all of the armor. So if you were to start grabbing armor, let me see, is it here? Items? No, it's here. HarnMaster system possessions, it would be here. Armor. So this comes with the module. So say you take a cloth vest, you can start seeing it fill in. Then say over that cloth vest, you have a leather surcoat. So now you see blunt edge, piercing fire. You can start seeing the numbers get calculated, right? And it layers it for you. This is what I was saying, like, on paper, I could see it being pretty daunting, especially getting it up and running. But here it's just like boom, boom, boom. And I feel like you need to know what it's doing, but you don't need to know what it's doing, right? If you need, like I was saying, there's like stumble rolls, fumble rolls. It's all built in here. It calculates your fatigue levels, or no, maybe you enter that as you go. But it will calculate. Here's spells, gear. Does it calculate your? I thought it calculated your penalties, right? Your universal penalty and your encumbrance penalty. I don't know where that is though at the moment. I thought it was under gear or under combat. But anyway, so it in theory it should track that kind of stuff. Maybe I just don't have enough on there to make it a problem. But your encumbrance of 1. So anyway, yeah. So it tracks all that stuff for you. You can enter your move, depending on your skills. Oh, here it is. Your physical penalty is a 1. Your encumbrance. My universal penalty is a 0. But if I were to make my fatigue 4, you can now see universal penalty is a 4. So then if I go back to my climbing skill, you can see my target now, my EML, my effective mastery level is 35. Why? Because I'm getting this. So it's taking 5 times my PP, universal penalty, plus my endurance becomes total of 5. Subtracts that from 60. So it's doing all the calculations for you. So you don't have to figure it out too much. So again, it helps to know what's going on, but you don't have to handle the paperwork, which I could see being a little intense. But yeah, so all that's sort of covered for you. And I can show you one of our player characters. Eamon was one. So you can see parent age. He didn't want people to know exactly his occupation as a cartographer. Here is his stats. Not very agile, but very smart. You have his birth date, et cetera, et cetera. I don't know what this... Anyway, his skills. Obviously here you default with some skills, and then as you start choosing your professions and backgrounds, you get more. So he ended up being communication. He was very much into writing, map making. His awareness was good. His drawing was quite good. His ritual skill was Save Kanor, which is it's a religious one. So that's sort of like his religious sect. Somewhere on here is your your piety points, and I can't remember where that's tracked. Oh no, piety points 11. So again, you can do that. Let me see if you roll this, does it let you... It's curious if it lets you spend the piety points somewhere or if you just track it, but it doesn't matter. But you can sort of see how the character comes together. His initiative was a 32. His dodge was a 30. His encumbrance was a 4 based on his equipment. His endurance is a 12. He had no fatigue, but you can see because he has an encumbrance of 4, his physical penalty was always going to be there. So if he were to attack, whoops, whatever, it would affect that. Or if he were to climb, he was bad at climbing, but you can sort of see it's a 4 times 5 goes from a 44 to 24. Does all of it for you. It's really great. It also includes when you get the module, includes skills. So you sort of, as you need them, you can bring them to your character. Includes possessions like armor, melee weapons. It's got all that ready to go, so you don't have to enter that. Missile weapons, boom. Missile weapons are interesting because the damage, I think, is the ammo, not the bow. I think that's how it works. So that way you can have different types of arrows with different qualities, etc. Now, because I'm a maniac, I added my own. For some reason, not showing up. But on top of that, wait, did I? There's tons of other things. AWD. Let me see if I have my gumshoe again. Sorry, these are just tons of things that I have going on that I thought I made I made my own compendium, but I might not have upgraded it for like version 12. You have to sort of tweak a few things to make it work. But what I'm going to show you, like Three Brothers Barrow. What else? A Minstrew Manor. Lethal Abbey. Cudsduel Outpost. Jedda's Keep. That's a pretty well-known keep. Hundholt Manor. These are all things that are pre-made for you. Let me just reload it. So, okay, so like here's one we just loaded, right? Three Brothers Barrow. So let's close some of the other ones. These are, again, you can just, these are modules you can download. I think they have the permission to. I guess a lot of them are broken, but maybe if you imported it. So now what you have is you have Three Brothers Barrow. You have notes about each the thing. You have like a little adventure. You have one of them just had. So now the creature is imported because we imported the stuff. So now you go to here and you have the Three Brothers Barrow. You have the monster with its stats all working. So there's stuff you can just jump in and play. You can also Three Brothers Barrow. So let's view scene. Here's the cave. The pasture. Again, all ready to go. Just download the module. But there's a lot of different things. There's Shower of Silver. There's Shower of Silver might be one of the main. A Bastard Bailiff. There's ton, but they also have like bestiaries, right? So they, I was showing you those charts. They've done the work to have all these brought in. They don't necessarily all have icons or pictures, but they're all in here. They have people from around the world, again, ready to go. There's, let me see, CPL. This is like equipment for various stuff, so it's not necessarily weapons, but these are all ready to go based on job. Market Miller, they make oat cakes, buns, so based on the career, you could see maybe it's a career price list. Maybe that's what CPL is. They have them for all of them, right? It's insane. So if you jump in, there's a lot of work that's already been done. The character sheet really simplifies managing the data. There's adventures, NPCs, everything's statted out, ready to go. You just download them. They're all free. They've gotten permission to do this. And so let me figure out. There's a Discord where it's called HarnMaster Discord. I'll see if I can include a link. I'm not sure exactly how that works, but I'm just looking up over here. The person on Discord, his username is Toasty, and he's sort of the creator of this module. It's really well done for a game that's not as big as like Pathfinder 2nd Edition or something like that. I think the module holds its own, and it really makes this game much more viable on some levels in the game, like, Mithras, where the module is not as far along and it works, but it's not perfect and it doesn't have all these extra things. And I was going to show you. Let me figure this out here. Let's open up a scene. Here we go. Scenes, Brothers Barrow. We'll open up the tomb. Activate. Okay. So what you can do is you can bring out NPCs. I'll bring out enemies. I'll bring out one of these, an orc of sorts, and then I'll bring out a player character. We'll bring... This guy was the other sort of the thiefy character. So what you can do is, you can enter into... Oh, you see, they got the walls all drawn. You don't... Again, all this is done for you. You enter combat, and you get your combat tracker, right? So it's going to... Let's see, begin combat. This is I think this is your turn. This is not something that comes with it. The noises might be, though. Do we roll initiative? 54, 50. Now, rolling, I don't know why it rolls it, because it's always the same. I think it's your initiative stat. But what you can do is, okay, so you grab these guys. It's his turn. He's going to target the orc, right? So let me see if I have all-in-one combat somehow set up to go. If it works. Because the all-in-one combat mods really help. So we're going to attack with a Mankar, which is tracking range. You can see that, right? So let's move him closer. And now let's see if we can do a Mankar. Okay, so it's an edged, but you can choose. Do you want it to be blunt? It's going to make it a little harder to do. Do you want to aim? No. Any additional modifiers? Well, let's make an additional modifier just to make sure we hit 20. Okay, so now what you see is, sound effects aside, we've aimed, edge. We've got the attack mastery level. That's what AML stands for. Again, it's the same thing as an effective mastery level, but here it's an attack. You're just like, oh my God, okay, stop with the acronyms. But we added a mod of 20, 65. So now the enemy has to decide what it's going to do. We're going to say it's going to block. It's going to block with a Mankar, which, remember, weapons have defensive stats. Shields have really good defensive stats. He doesn't have a defensive shield. So we're going to add no defense modifier, and we're going to okay. And then it's going to roll simultaneously. Okay, so you see we've got marginal success, which if we were to look at the tables, we would know that means the attack is blocked, right? So let's try that attack again. We're going to boom, 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 Mankar, additional modifier 35. And they're going to counter strike with a weapon. And we're going to give them a -10 just to see what happens when it hits. Again, it's going to simultaneously roll. Okay. So, the counter-strike misses. I'm not sure what happened. This is the trouble with the all-in-one, right? So he rolled a 95, which is a total failure. Why was the attack at a 50? I was trying to go for a little higher, but so you sort of get the idea, like, make it a 40. Counter-strike with a -30. So I think that's the attack roll of a 4, which is... I wonder why it's a marginal... I'm reading it wrong. Doesn't matter. But you can sort of see how it goes. And I was hoping basically to get an attack where it shows the damage, just so I could show that. 40. Or am I making the... Oh, calculate orc injury. Okay, so here we go. So we had like an attacker strikes for 2d6 plus 5 impact. So the counter strike was whatever, and probably there was like a bonus. That might be 4. Then there's a roll of 4 for the damage, and then you calculate the orc injury, and he gets an S2, which is a severe 2, and then it should include that because he's got an encumbrance of 1, but now he's got total of 3. So I think that 2 is affecting maybe his UP. And so, and it goes from there. And if you can see here, a shock roll is required. It's a thorax injury, edge, blah, blah, blah. This is the armor layer he has protecting it. But, so you roll your, there was that table that showed severity. So, and it was like +1, +7, so he was able to clear probably the second layer, like, because he rolled a 13, the armor subtracted 8. Armor blocks damage, it doesn't make it harder to hit. And so his result was a 5 because he hit in the thorax. It becomes an S2. He rolls a shock roll. Shock roll is your endurance usually. That's calculated for you based on other things. You roll that. So because shock roll, he doesn't get stunned, whatever it is. But so the reason why I wanted to go into this is because what it lets you do is it takes a complicated system that your players may find daunting. As the GM, you need to know what's going on. But your players, I think it helps them ease into it. So as long as you have a GM that really masters the rules and really familiarizes themselves with the VTT modules and what it can do, you end up with, I think, a really smooth, easy way to play a system that might not be super popular compared to the big ones like Pathfinder, D&D, but I feel like is absolutely worth checking out. It's extremely doable if you play digitally. You play on the tabletop, it's still doable, but it does require some bookkeeping and things like that, in my opinion. But if you're doing it digitally, and a lot of us are these days, absolutely check out the VTT with HarnMaster. And like I was saying, you can the rule set and the books and the setting are kept separate enough that you can kind of do one or the other. Let me see if I can jump over to Savage Worlds, Harn Middle Earth. Begin migration, because I haven't looked at these in a long time. So again, people on the internet started putting together. Oops, wrong one. Ways to convert Middle Earth, and so I sort of took that and ran with it a little bit. So yeah, it's so it gives you the basic systems. I was doing compendiums, so I don't know where. I think I have to sort of modify those, but Shower Silver is one that's for Harn proper. But because they give you ritual spells, like I was renaming these things to be more Middle Earthy and vibe. Characters, you got the skills, you just got to figure out how to make those work for Middle Earth. But it's very doable. It's more flexible than I think it gets credit for. You're just sort of reskinning. I think when you use the VTT, you can, but it's easier if you can call whatever the spell is in Harn something else, but leave all the guts underneath it the same. And I feel like that's a smooth way to do it. But anyway, the point is that I feel like you could really make a lot of this stuff work. This was an elf test. I don't know how much of it's going to work. But like Noldor, disease resistance. I was pulling some of this stuff from Middle Earth's role-playing game. So I was creating like physical traits. I don't know if I was able to actually make the effect or if it's just the description. But it's just a reminder like, hey, like Noldor, elves have these bonuses, stuff like that. I got the skills down, basic skills, morality. I was going to sort of make like shadow. I was trying to figure out how to make that work. still needed piety points. So, I was trying to reskin the mechanics. But the point is that, I think it's worth giving a shot. The VTT lets you really play around and takes a lot of the burden off moment to moment, so that as long as you remember what you're doing in case there's an edge case or you're trying to do something a little bit weird that the automation doesn't handle. Let me just jump back into the main Harn game. It really handles it nicely. As I was saying, there's tons of stuff for free that you can just download to populate your world, so you don't even have to do anything really to get up and running. I find the rule set really good. The PDFs can be a little pricey, but look for drive-through RPG sales. Harn, Columbia's site has sales around the holidays coming up. And as I said, HarnMaster Gold, sort of the latest version of the more complicated non-Columbia Games rule set. And again, not more complicated like crazy, but that should be releasing relatively soon. I thought it was going to be over the summer, but pretty soon. The PDFs, I think, are out there. And then the hardback copy that I ordered should be on its way eventually. So yeah, HarnMaster, this is the one from Columbia Games. Absolutely worth checking out. I hope this provided some insight into what I like about it, the rules, the setting, how they all sort of came together for me in a way that a lot of RPGs don't, and how the VTT can really help you run a game that is maybe more complicated than the current trends of today's RPGs. So anyway, this has been Black Lodge Trivia Night. Thank you very much for checking this out. I'm Art again. I hope Matt and Patrick had a great time at Heidi Klum's Halloween party. I'll be looking for my invite next year in the mail. Heidi, come on, let's make this happen. And then I'm just going to show up to something dumb like Linus. I'm not even going to have a good costume, but anyway. But yeah, we're a tabletop RPG podcast. We have actual plays up all the time. If you're watching this, thank you. You've already found our YouTube channel. Like and subscribe if this stuff is what you're looking for. We have a computer role-playing game, actual play, Let's Plays up, a lot of the Souls games, some Darklands. I'm trying to get another classic CRPG up and running soon. What do we got? We got Eat the Reich. We've got Mithras Imperative, Cold War spy game. Matt's prepping Delta Green. Matt and I are doing Liminal Horror. We're going to hopefully be wrapping up an English Eerie pretty soon. So there's a lot of actual plays going on as well. If you prefer audio versions of those types of things, just search for Black Lodge Trivia Night wherever you get your podcast. Blah, blah, blah. We'll show up. That's the spiel. Join us in our Discord if you want to chat. No big deal either way. But thank you very much for checking this out. And we'll be back soon. Take care. The music during the RPG session in Foundry was provided by the Foundry module Tabletop RPG Music and composed by Ian Fisher. You can find his Patreon at www.patreon.com/tabletop RPG music, all one word.